Chapter 28. That was hatred. The hatred of every student who was fired by Director Zhang. Director Zhang said stubbornly, "If you didn't steal it, would you return it?" The girl didn't expect that this scum would still say that. She was so angry that her whole body was shaking. Fujio pressed her hand down and said faintly, "According to Director Zhang, it's better for everyone to not return the things they picked up. Because if you are poor, you will be wrongly accused of being a thief?" At this point, she looked up, and her silver hair was fierce. "I heard that the school leaders want to recommend Director Zhang to teach in other places. Shouldn't such a teacher be banned?" "You." Director Zhang's fingers trembled slightly. That school leader immediately interrupted him. "No, don't worry. The education industry doesn't want this kind of person." Hearing that, Director Zhang froze. He turned around with an ugly expression and looked at that school leader. He had no more hope. The reporters swarmed over, and someone asked him, "Do you feel guilty?" There were also reporters interviewing the students, and one of them asked, "Since you were wronged, why didn't you say it earlier? Did you want to blow it up?" At any time, there would be such malice. Fujio glanced over coldly. The media colleagues couldn't bear to watch any longer. They pushed the reporter aside and said, "We've all seen that post online. Some people are wronged and fired, but their hearts are still kind. I would like to ask the students, what is it that allows you to maintain such a kind heart?" The microphone was handed to the girl, who was accused of being a thief. The girl took it and put it in Fujio's hand, looking at her with bright eyes. Fujio smiled and turned around. She looked straight into the camera, and her eyes were like dazzling lights. "Because we all believe that justice may be late, but it will never be absent." At that moment, the students couldn't help but have their eyes turn red. Yes, justice may be late, but it will never be absent. We have come this far because of this belief. Pak. Chinemo pressed the remote control of the TV, glanced at his subordinate next to him, and frowned slightly. "Why are you crying?" "When I was young, I didn't know anything except for computers. My teacher told me to study, because he thought I didn't do proper work." Fatty rubbed his face as he said, "If Boss Chin didn't poach me, I wouldn't have become a hacker." Chinemo glanced at the other one. "Rich second generation, don't tell me you were persuaded to study as well." "I'm touched." Coco nibbled on the rabbit's ear. "That bad director deserves to be destroyed. Captain, you should call your mother right now, and make sure he can't go anywhere." Hearing this, Chinemo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his gaze calm. "I don't have to do anything. Someone will make it hard for him." "Who?" Coco was surprised. Chinmo's slender fingers flicked the silver lighter in his hand. "Spadesy." Hearing this, Fatty and Coco immediately jumped up. "Boss Chin, are you saying that Spadesy was the one behind all this?" Chapter 29. Among these students? Coco and Fatty couldn't help but look at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Let's not talk about how ordinary these 6 students were. One of them was a gay who had once harassed Boss Chin. How could someone like that be Spadesy? Chinemo glanced up. In the smoke, that handsome face was faintly discernible. "Are you guys acting strange? Didn't I say before that Spadesy is a student? But how can Boss Chin be sure that Spadesy is among them?" Fatty still didn't understand. Chinemo glanced at the news page. A fatal sentence. Because only the victim would want to seek justice. Fatty paused for a moment and immediately understood. If the King of Spades was here, the range could be narrowed even more. Because only 4 of them were men. The registered account of the King of Spades didn't have a gender display either. But judging from his style of doing things, he should be a guy. That night at the Fu residence, Fujio took out the USB. Just as she walked downstairs, she heard He Honghua on the phone. Her voice was loud, as if she was arguing with the other party. Obviously, the result was not satisfactory. Otherwise, He Honghua wouldn't have lowered her hands and stared blankly at a place. Seeing her walk down, He Honghua smiled and said, "Come on, sit down. Mom is stewing your favorite pig trotters with chili and potatoes." Madam woke up at 3 in the morning and stewed it for young master. She simmered it over a small fire. The auntie walked over with the tea. "You can eat it later. It's definitely fragrant and soft." Hearing that, Fujio put her arms around He Honghua's shoulders and said, "Thank you, Mom." "You child, what are you thanking me for?" He Honghua's round face blushed. "Hurry up and get up. How old are you? Why are you still hugging me?" Although he said that, he couldn't hide the happiness on his face. However, at this moment, the phone on the coffee table rang again and again, very ear-piercing. He Honghua glanced at the caller ID, and her smile faded away. She wanted to send Fujio away. Fujio was a smart person. As soon as she saw her mother's expression, she handed her a cup of tea before He Honghua could say anything. She said in a calm voice, "Mom, take it. No matter what happens, I'll be with you." Hearing her daughter's words, He Honghua felt an inexplicable sense of strength in her heart. She extended her hand and swiped the screen open. "Hey, tell them that I, He Honghua, have never mistreated them in the past year. Now that the esports competition is about to begin, do they have a conscience to leave just like that? 100,000 per person? Duze, you're asking for too much. Mr. He, I'm talking to you nicely. Look at you, what's with this attitude?" Duze's tone seemed to be specially used to annoy people. "Fortunately, I left early and followed Sister Qing. People from the countryside are from the countryside. How can they be so short-sighted?" President He, for the sake of my kindness, I, Duze, will also give you some advice. Hurry up and divorce President Fu. Do you think a fat village girl like you is worthy of fighting with Sister Qing? Pa! He Honghua hung up the phone with a heavy thud, and the phone was thrown out. Her chest was heaving up and down violently, and there were too many emotions in her eyes. Anger, sadness, and indignation. Then, she saw Fujio looking at her, and she immediately said, "The pig trotters in the pot should be ready. Mom will get you a bowl." Chapter 30. He Honghua paused and did not speak. Fujio raised her eyebrows and looked at Chen Xiaodong, who obviously knew the answer. "Tell me what's going on." He didn't say anything unnecessary, just like the young master, who had just woken up in the hospital that day. Chen Xiaodong was shocked. He couldn't help but say, "It's all because of that third." Fujio tilted her head. Chen Xiaodong walked up and said, "Young master, esports is a big project in Jiangqing now. The Qing group is the leader. Every year, they select some people from the companies under them to join them. Not only do they have to be good at gaming, but they also have to be young enough to make money." Madam had taken a fancy to this, so she had spent money to hire some gaming experts from school. She had provided them with food and lodging, and trained them for a year, just so that they could participate in this year's esports preliminary competition. As long as they could stand out in this competition, they would be selected by the Qing group and signed as professional players. At that time, Madam would also get a lot of profits. However, at this time, the three groups of agents had poached all the talented players from the company. Now there were only some ordinary players left in the company. If they continued to participate in the esports competition like this, they would only be eliminated. At that time, not only would the company lose a year's worth of investment, but it would also lose its business license. The third one did it on purpose. At first, Madam could still handle it, but later, young master was fired. The third one told the partner of the company that, "Say what?" Fujio's voice was very calm, and she gestured for him to continue. Chen Xiaodong glanced at He Honghua hesitantly. In the end, as if throwing caution to the wind, he said, "They said that young master likes men, and won't be successful in the future." After hearing that, those people decided to withdraw their investments. Madam can no longer maintain the company." Hearing this, Fujio's eyes darkened. Her silver hair was bone-chilling. He Honghua said anxiously, "Jio, don't listen to Xiaodong's nonsense. People have to come up with a solution. Do you think your mother is so easy to bully? Don't worry, no matter how poor your mother is, I will make sure you eat and drink well." "Mom." Fujio looked up and smiled. "You're wrong. I should be the one taking you to eat and drink. Isn't it just playing games?" "Me too." He Honghua smiled brightly. "I know you know how to play games. Plants vs. Zombies, right? Alright, that's not what the esports competition is about. Come, let's eat first. I still need to make a trip to Huai City." At that time, He Honghua didn't know that Fujio really knew how to play games. After the meal, Chen Xiaodong was stopped by Fujio. Come here. Chen Xiaodong didn't know what was going on, but when he heard his young master speak in such a lazy manner, he felt a chill run down his spine. Young master, you called for me? Fujio closed the esports magazine on her lap and leaned back. Her silver hair fell down, and she said with an indescribable devilish charm, "Give me the roster of the company's players." Chapter 31. Give it to me. Two very cool words. His voice was cold. Chen Xiaodong immediately turned around and took out some documents for Fujio. Fujio only flipped through 2 pages and went upstairs. Chen Xiaodong didn't know what his young master wanted to do. He listened carefully and heard the sound of the game. That's right. After Fujio got the player information, she logged into Hero and glanced at the rankings of all the regions. She put her finger under her chin and thought. Finally, she moved her fingers and opened her friend's page in the game. She sent a message to Chinemo. Almighty Chin, how have you been these 2 days? Have you been looking for me hard? At this time, Chinemo was still sitting in the company, having an overseas meeting. After all, he was in the business of online games, so it wasn't strange for his computer to be on. The atmosphere in the meeting room was extremely cold. A ding sound was heard. The emperor-like man sitting in the middle tilted his head, and a faint light flashed across his deep eyes. He raised his hand, signaling for the meeting to be paused. Not only were the senior executives of the group stunned by this gesture, but even the secretary behind the man was in disbelief. It was important to note that Boss Chin would never have any interruptions during a meeting. Why did he for a game? But everyone just watched as the handsome man picked up the laptop with one hand and walked out. What's going on? I don't know. There was a whisper in the meeting room. Chinemo remained in that position, leaning against the wall and looking at the only friend in his friends list, Spadesy. His long fingers paused for a while before he typed on the keyboard. Not really. Fujio looked at those 2 cold words, and then looked at his character image. She chuckled lightly, and sat on the chair with a lollipop in her mouth. She replied lazily, Almighty Chin, it will be hard for you to find a girlfriend in the future if you say one thing but mean another. Once again, Chinemo had the urge to kill her. His deep eyes darkened again. His thin lips curled up slightly, and he sent a line of words. You like lollipops, don't you? They taste like chocolate. Fujio looked at the computer screen, and her back suddenly froze. If she hadn't been in her own room, she would have suspected that someone had pressed a camera on her. But when she thought about it carefully, it was impossible for the other party to confirm that it was her. Otherwise, he would have called out her name long ago instead of mentioning lollipops. This man, it was one thing to have a devilish appearance, but he was also so two-faced. But how did he know that she liked to eat lollipops? Could it be that time on the rooftop? Fujio's eyes flashed and she laughed. Looks like I need to be more careful next time. Almighty Chin is indeed different from others. He was too difficult to deal with. Since she had to join the Chin group in the end, she might as well strike first. Look, we've been fighting for so many days. Even a dog would have feelings. Fujio continued to type. The weather has been good recently. I believe Almighty Chin already knows that I'm in Jiang City. What do you think, Almighty Chin? Are you interested in coming out to meet me tomorrow? Chinemo looked at the pure silver laptop in his hands. He thought about many things that Spadesy would say to his question, or deny or evade, but he didn't expect Spadesy to ask him out. Chapter 32. Chinmo's eyes deepened, and he didn't reply immediately. Fujio wasn't in a hurry either. She sat on the chair, put her fingers under her chin, and looked at the chat box. After about 5 seconds, finally, a word appeared on it. Okay. It was from Chinemo. Fujio wanted to ask more, such as where to meet and how to contact him. But she was interrupted by the other party. I'm still in a meeting. We'll talk about the details later. His commanding tone was cold without the slightest bit of warmth. But he didn't forget to reply to her during the meeting. The Almighty really cared about her, didn't he? Fujio curved her thin lips devilishly. Okay, I'll wait for you. Mo's eyes flashed over the words, "I'll wait for you." He raised his hand and closed the laptop. The secretary followed behind him, his face full of disbelief. Did he see it wrong? Why did he feel like CEO Chin just smiled? By the time Mo walked into the conference room, the executives had already stopped talking. But what was CEO doing during those 10 minutes? They were really curious. It looked like he was playing games. Since when did games become so attractive? Mo didn't look at them. He walked slowly to the expensive leather chair, put down the laptop, crossed his legs slightly, and looked intimidating. "Continue." His words caused the higher-ups to calm down one after another. "CEO Chin, this is the esports report for this quarter. There are more than 50 companies in the city." The voices in the conference room gradually became quiet. At the Fu House, Fujio sat in front of the computer and thought about it. Meetings needed time, especially at night, so it wouldn't end so easily. She played 2 rounds of games and got the first kill. Then, she took a towel and went into the bathroom. It wouldn't be too late to talk after taking a shower. On the other side, Mo opened his silver laptop again after the meeting. The secretary still stood behind him, not daring to speak or move, but he couldn't control his eyes. Although CEO was a godlike existence in esports competitions, but CEO never chatted with others in the game. Today, what the hell was going on? This was the second time. The second time he saw the CEO typing? "Are you still there?" This was a message from their CEO. The other party seemed to be offline. He didn't reply. The CEO didn't move either. He just sat there with his legs crossed and looked at the laptop screen. Was the president planning to wait for the other party? The secretary felt that she was shocked again. What kind of person could make the president wait? Yes, I just went to take a shower." Fujio saw the message when she came out of the bathroom. She opened the message with one hand and wiped her hair with the other as she replied. Droplets of water flowed down her silver hair and slid down the side of her face, which was hard to tell if it was a female or not, and into her white shirt. She looked really seductive. Mo sat in the huge conference room. When he saw the reply, he asked curiously, "Are you a girl or a guy?" Fujio paused and her eyes flickered. "Male." After replying, Fujio typed with both hands and added, "What? Almighty Chin, don't tell me you've fallen for me?" When Mo heard this, his originally cold black eyes suddenly lit up with a terrifying flame. The secretary standing behind him could not help but cough violently. Chapter 33. This person really dared to say that. CEO wouldn't kill him out of anger, would he? Secretary Liang, who originally wanted to go home early, decided not to leave. Watching CEO being flirted with was more interesting than watching TV at home. What a pity. As soon as he had this thought, Mo picked up his laptop and threw it at him indifferently. "Since Secretary Liang likes to watch the show in the company, then stay here and work overnight. I'll check the results tomorrow." Secretary Liang. "CEO, you can't be like this." Mo pressed the elevator button and walked into the team resting area on the top floor. He raised the corner of his mouth, and that smile slowly blossomed, like a peerless ice flower in the Arctic. Fujio saw that there was no reply, so she typed another question mark. Ding. Mo sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, opened his laptop, and saw this message. He typed slowly. "I'm not interested in men, but if you were a woman, I would definitely let you have a taste of what it means to like someone." He typed the word like very hard. It was definitely not a pure meaning. Fujio understood what he meant, and she blushed inexplicably. She didn't want to fall out with him before they even met. Fujio cleverly changed the topic. "When exactly are you free tomorrow? Morning or afternoon?" "Afternoon." 2 more words. Fujio thought that this man always spoke so little if she didn't provoke him. Fujio looked at her watch. "Then wait for me after school. I have my last class at 6, so I can be there at 6:15. The Landing Cafe near a university. See you there." After saying that, Fujio wanted to go offline. But she didn't expect that there would be another message from the other side. It wasn't warm at all. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Mo's eyes were indifferent. "Why do you want to meet?" I'm always being chased like this. It's annoying. After Fujio sent the message, she put down her towel and waited for a reply. Of course, she couldn't tell him the real reason online. Chinemo only replied with a ha sound. It was quite cold, and he obviously didn't believe her. Then he typed another message. Tell me your contact information. Fujio also thought about this. She didn't want to leave her phone number, so she simply left her WeChat ID. Got it. The other party replied without a single punctuation mark. Sure enough, the words were like the person, arrogant beyond belief. It seemed that this godly CEO didn't want to continue chatting with her. As expected, girls were more popular in the game. But she had seen him anyway. When they went to the cafe, they could just say Chinmo's name. She was afraid that Almighty Chin would ask for a VIP room at a rich man's place. The kind that wouldn't reveal any information. That's alright, I'll use WeChat again. After making up her mind, Fujio turned off the game and went to sleep. She didn't have the habit of carrying her phone with her, so she didn't know that there were 3 WeChat friend verification messages waiting for her to verify them. On the top floor of the Chin group, outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of the entire city were lit up. Inch by inch, the shadows were reflected in Chinmo's bottomless eyes. He held a glass of red wine in one hand and looked at his phone screen. His eyes gradually turned cold. Why haven't you accepted my friend request yet? Good, very good. Chapter 34. The next day, Fujio took her wallet and was about to go out in her school uniform. Young master, wait. Driver old Wang was still eating fried dough sticks. I'll start the car now and take you to school. Young master seems to be up earlier than yesterday? No need, I'll skate over. Fujio stood in front of the door and pointed at the skateboard under her feet. Driver old Wang was surprised. You're not taking the car? Uncle Wang, you don't have to wait outside anymore. It's autumn, and it's getting colder. You're old, so I can go by myself. As she said this, Fujio's figure disappeared, leaving only her lingering voice. Driver old Wang froze in place. Was young master concerned about him? Old Wang knew Fujio's previous absurdity better than anyone else. He thought that young master was only trying to get some money from madam, so he behaved so sensibly recently. Who would have thought that young master had really changed? She had changed so much that it made people feel warm in their hearts. 8 o'clock was the time when the school was the busiest. All kinds of luxury cars were parked at the entrance. This was not strange for Jiang City No. 1 Middle School, because most of the students here came from rich families, and it was normal for them to compare at this age, so they would ask their chauffeurs to take them to school. In the gap between the rows of luxury cars, a handsome figure dashed past. Vaguely, one could only see the dazzling silver hair. It was Fujio. Her left leg was on the skateboard, and she was wearing a big black headset on her head. Her school uniform fluttered in the wind as she bent her knees, revealing a part of her fair waist. The lines were so beautiful that many girls wanted to take out their phones and take a picture of them. So cool. I thought he was so cool when he was interviewed yesterday. Now he looks even cooler skateboarding. What should I do? I think I'm going to change my love. Fujio. As if she heard the girl's words, Fujio looked back and curled up the corner of her mouth. In an instant, countless girls fell for it. After this incident, everyone's opinion of Fujio had changed. Especially that female classmate Shui Yaoyao, who didn't have a good family background. She officially returned to school today and requested to be in the same class as Fujio. When he saw Fujio enter the classroom, he immediately raised the steamed bun in his hand. My mom steamed this herself. She asked me to thank you. Because of Shui Yaoyao's action, all the students in the class looked over at Fujio and started discussing. Fujio definitely won't eat her buns. What if she gets a stomachache from eating something unclean? I know, right? Hey, don't tell me she likes Fujio. Gosh, why doesn't she look at herself in the mirror? She's just a big fat pig, and she dares to think about Fujio. Hearing these words, Shui Yaoyao bit her lip in embarrassment. She just wanted to thank him. She didn't want to cause him trouble. But she forgot that she was a joke. Thinking of this, Shui Yaoyao wanted to take her hand back. What she didn't expect was that the young man took off his earphones and suddenly leaned forward. He opened his mouth slightly and bit into the bun in her hand. And it's delicious. I haven't had breakfast yet. Thanks. Because he had just started speaking, his voice still sounded lazy and luxurious, coupled with his smile that seemed to be able to melt the first snow in the world. Chapter 35. At that time, Fujio didn't know. It was because of one small action of hers. From then on, Shui Yaoyao swore that she would protect this young man. Because he protected her, Fujio didn't think she had done anything that moved people. But when people expressed their gratitude, of course, she had to accept it sincerely. Although she was a person who cared about appearance, she didn't like it when people mocked her appearance and body shape. What's wrong with being fat during puberty? It's normal. She went back to her seat with the fragrant bun in her mouth. Fujio turned on her phone. She was going to search for how to learn physics, which was her weakness after all. However, before she could open the webpage, 5 verification messages appeared on WeChat. The first one was normal, just like the sender's style. I am Chinemo. The last 4 were also normal. She was stimulated by the other side of Almighty Chin. Every single one of them was a cold, ha. And it was extremely cold. Fujio admitted that she was in the wrong in this matter. But at that time, this man didn't say that he wanted to add her. Fujio paused and clicked accept. Thinking that they were going to meet today and work together in the future, she replied, I went to bed last night and didn't have my phone with me. I just saw your verification message. After sending the message, Fujio subconsciously waited for a reply. But there was no reply at all during class. Fujio, who was as cool as ever, quickly put this matter behind her mind. The physics teacher was teaching, and Fujio was frowning. Was she the only one who thought that this subject wasn't meant for humans to learn? Without the tablet, class became longer and longer. In the evening, the phone in her desk vibrated. Fujio took it out and saw that it was a voice message from Chinemo. I'm in class, can't listen. She raised her hand and typed, very succinctly. He didn't reply again. Fujio didn't care. After 3 minutes, Chinemo texted back. Change the meeting place. I'll wait for you at the school gate. My car is easy to recognize, you should know. Fujio. She knew. Not only her, but all the teachers and students in the school should have recognized that top-of-the-line military Hummer. Not to mention Jiang City, there was not a second one in the entire 3 provinces in the northeast. That car and the red license plate number were indicative of his distinguished identity. But if that was the case, wouldn't she have to get into his car in front of everyone? This time, Xiaodong was going to go crazy again. Okay. She didn't care. Chinemo tilted his head to look at the words on his phone before sitting up on the bed. He looked like he had just woken up. His dark eyes were still a little heavy, and his white shirt was half open, revealing the man's strong honey-colored chest. Every inch of it was seductive and sexy, and it was enough to make one's nose bleed. He tilted his head. His hair, which had been trimmed to the point of perfection, slightly covered his eyes. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and replied in a domineering tone. Don't turn off your phone again. Chapter 36. Even through the screen, Fujio could feel how cold the man's expression was when he typed this sentence. He really couldn't turn off his phone. Turning it off would delay things. It was past 5 o'clock. The people on the top floor kept looking up at the time. Why isn't CEO Chin here yet? I think he waited for someone's WeChat for most of the night. Whose WeChat is so important? I don't know. While they were talking, the door was pulled open with a swoosh. Chinemo walked in with his shirt half open, and his black hair was like an arrogant ink-black knight. He was so cold and cool that people instantly stopped talking, but his body was so good that many people started swallowing their saliva after taking a look. Coco came over and asked, Captain, did you sleep here last night? Was the company too busy? Chinemo didn't answer him. Instead, he turned sideways and pressed the company phone on the desk. Prepare a set of clothes for me and send them up immediately. Yes. Secretary Liang was very efficient. Chinemo took the shirt from his hands. his fingers fiddling with the sleeves, buttoning them up one by one. Then he said slowly, "Spadesy asked to meet me." "What?" Bang! Coco and Fatty stood up from their chairs at the same time. Meeting? The kind of meeting between online gamers. This was too unreal. Could it be a trap? This guy is very sly, Coco guessed. Fatty agreed. CEO Chin, let's bring more people. We can't let him escape this time. Do you think I wouldn't notice if it was a trap? Or? Chinemo looked up casually, and his eyes were cold. Are you reminding me of the time I was tricked? Coco and Fatty froze at the same time, and their scalps went numb. No. Sob sob sob. The CEO is so scary today. At the same time, the last class had started. Usually at this time, no one was in the mood to study. Everyone was looking down at the time on their phones. Fujio was no exception. After all, she had an appointment. The English teacher knew that they couldn't listen anymore, so he thought of a few questions to lighten the mood. Then he called Fujio up. What kind of girl do you like? What type of girl do you like? Everyone in the class knew that Fujio was always the last in the exams. He couldn't understand English at all. Although some girls were interested in this question, they knew that Fujio couldn't answer it. Jiang Feiyang sat next to Fujio, looking like he was watching a good show. Shuetingting was anxious. She took out a pen and poked at Fujio's uniform from behind, writing one word on the paper, beautiful. As long as Fujio could answer with one word, she would pass. But she was afraid that Fujio didn't even know this word. The teacher was also looking at her. Fujio smiled. Her thin lips parted, and she spoke fluent English. Do you think I don't have feelings just because I'm poor and ugly? If God had given me beauty and wealth, I would have made it as hard for you to leave me, as it is now for me to leave you. Her voice had always been pleasant to listen to. Now that she was using an authentic British accent to slowly recite those sentences, it was full of exotic magnetism. Almost all the students in the class were intoxicated by it. This is. The English teacher was very excited. The original sentence from Jane Eyre. It seems like the teacher likes this book very much. The heroine in the book is my type. Fujio was still smiling, and she winked at Shuetingting behind her. So handsome and bewitching. Chapter 37. The English teacher took the lead in applauding and gave unprecedented affirmation, asking the students to learn from Fujio. Jiang Feiyang's eyes widened. He originally wanted to see a joke, but he didn't expect to see this little weakling in the limelight. Fujio sat down, glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, and curled up her thin lips. That obvious mockery made Jiang Feiyang feel like his face was about to be slapped swollen. Moreover, he didn't know why, but he actually thought that Fujio looked good like that. Was he crazy? Alright students, this class ends here. Class dismissed. With one sentence from the English teacher, the students flooded out of the classroom. Fujio took her school bag and threw it behind her handsomely. She still had her skateboard under her arm, and she slowly walked into the crowd. Chen Xiaodong was already waiting at the teaching building. Young master, where are you going? Wait for me. Fujio stopped in her tracks. Many girls looked at him with blushing faces, and they stopped as well. Chen Xiaodong paused for a moment. Did he see it wrong? Why do all these female students look so shy? Young master. Chen Xiaodong lowered his voice. What did you do this time? Did you hit on girls? Fujio took out her phone and replied lazily. No. All right, Chen Xiaodong said seriously. I trust you. Then young master, where are we going now? Are we going to Computer City to buy parts? I don't know why, but young master seems to be very interested in these things recently. Fujio opened WeChat and looked at the words, I'm here. She smiled. Before buying parts, let's go see someone first. Chen Xiaodong responded with an oh, completely unaware of the next critical attack. Who are you meeting? Chinemo. Fujio only gave him 2 words and walked away. Chen Xiaodong suddenly froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Even his expression was magnified to the extreme. Young master, wait, calm down. Young master Qin will treat you like a pervert and beat you into a bun. At the same time, at the gate of Jiang City No. 1 Middle School, A pure black Hummer with smooth lines was parked on the side of the road, like a fierce tiger. The license plate number was white with red letters, and there were bodyguards standing around the car. His aura was shocking, but even so, it couldn't stop the enthusiasm of the students. It's Almighty Chin's car. Ah, I'm going crazy. Chin Emo was really popular, just like a superstar. As soon as he appeared, someone would pick up their phone to take pictures. No matter if it was a man or a woman, after seeing him play, no one would not love him. However, no matter how many people gathered outside, Chin Emo on the Hummer remained unmoved. He was sitting in the back seat. His nose bridge was straight, and his face was handsome. He looked like he was asleep. One of his hands was supporting his face lazily, and the other was resting on his long legs. His long and narrow eyes were slightly closed, and he looked very careless. But when his WeChat beeped, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as evil as the night, as though he could see through everything in this world. Chin Emo unlocked his phone, a line of words appearing on the screen. I'm heading that way now. Coco, who was sitting in the passenger seat, also heard the sound, and for some reason he became excited. I've been playing games for so long, but this is the first time I've met an in-game character. What does Spadesy look like? It couldn't be a burly man, right? Chapter 38. Fatty was also very excited, and his fingers tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of high school student could be this good? I really want to PK his hacking skills in person. Coco bit the rabbit's ear. Then I want to play games with him. Don't do that. It will make us look weak. Fatty patted him on the shoulder. Bring out your online celebrity aura. Isn't it just a gay meetup? Coco snorted. You sound like you're calm, but your hands are still shaking. It seemed that CEO was calmer. The two looked at each other, and they couldn't help but look at the rearview mirror at the same time. CEO Captain should also be seeing someone in the game for the first time, right? Who would have thought that the cold CEO would actually agree to a gay meetup? But if that guy was Spadesy, then it wouldn't be strange at all. Since the Hummer didn't leave, the school gate was already surrounded by students. This was the scene that Fujio saw when she came out. Everyone was tiptoeing and looking in the same direction, and their excitement was all expressed on their faces. Some girls couldn't help but cover their mouths the moment Chin Emo opened the window. Chin Emo looked out the window, and his dark eyes scanned the crowd inch by inch. Spadesy would come out in a moment. As soon as he thought of this, his usually indifferent thin lips revealed a playful expression that he had never shown before. Pa! He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His arm was casually resting on the outside of the car, and his fingers were playing with the limited edition Zippo lighter. His black hair was a little messy due to the breeze, and his godlike handsome side profile was enough to make people scream. Ah! Young Master Chin! Young Master Chin! Chen Xiaodong, who was behind Fujio, was stunned again. He didn't expect that young Master Chin would appear in front of them right after he said he wanted to see young Master Chin. It was like God was torturing him. He had to hold young Master back and not let him do anything stupid. Fujio looked at Chen Xiaodong, who was standing in front of her, and raised her eyebrows. Young Master, Chen Xiaodong tried to persuade him. Look, there are so many people here. It's not a good time to go. Besides, young Master Chin rarely shows up at school, so he must be waiting for someone. Let's not join in the fun, okay? What if he was expelled from school again? Madam must be very sad. Fujio laughed. You know he is waiting for someone, but do you know who he is waiting for? Ah, who? Chen Xiaodong was at a loss. Fujio's voice was deep. Young Master, to be honest, you can't be so whimsical. You. This time, Fujio didn't wait for him to finish. She shot him a sharp look. Then he reached out and pushed away Chen Xiaodong, who was shivering from head to toe. He put on his headphones, clamped his skateboard, and strode toward the black Hummer surrounded by the crowd. That head of silver hair, under the dim yellow light, was exceptionally dazzling. Wait, that's Fujio. Could it be that he still hasn't given up on young Master Chin? No. I just fell in love with him. Let's make a bet. If young Master Chin sees him, he'll definitely tell him to scram. Chapter 39. It was as if she couldn't hear the discussions around her. Fujio walked straight to the front of the Hummer. Even the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. The bodyguard immediately reached out and blocked her way. Last time, it was this young man who suddenly appeared and threw himself into the CEO's arms. This time he appeared again. Was he treating them like decorations? Facing such a block, Fujio didn't show any fear. Instead, she raised her eyebrows, and there was a playful smile on her lips. Chen Xiaodong, who was in the crowd, let out a sigh of relief. It was good that young Master Qin's bodyguard was here. He wouldn't let young Master pass, so he didn't have to worry about young Master Qin. Ah! Coco, who was sitting in the car, also recognized Fujio. It's him. Fatty was busy with the computer last time, so he didn't know what was going on. Who is he? I think he's the gay who has a crush on Captain. Coco said this and found Qin Emo looking at him, so he immediately changed his words. No, I mean he's a crazy fan. Yes, very crazy. And his way of expressing his love is a bit special. Hearing this, Fatty looked quite disappointed. Oh, then he can't be Spade Z. Fujio saw that the other party didn't have any intention of opening the door, and Qin Emo seemed to be looking down at his phone. She opened WeChat and sent a message. Almighty Qin, tell your bodyguard to move. Qin Emo suddenly paused and raised his head subconsciously. His eyes met the familiar figure outside the car through the bodyguard. Under the dusk, that person was holding a skateboard in his left hand and a phone in his right. His school uniform was unzipped, and he was wearing a beige t-shirt. His eyes were black and white, and they were hazy. The light shone down on his silver-haired eyes, and for some reason, there was a hint of seductiveness in them. Qin Mo's pupils shook violently. Then his deep eyes narrowed dangerously. Fujio saw that he saw her, so she shook her phone lazily. Qin Emo didn't let Fujio get in the car immediately. He flicked the cigarette but with his slender fingers, lowered his eyes, and sent a message. The one outside, is that you? After Fujio saw the message, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. So the people in Almighty Qin's family are counted as one. This time, Qin Emo saw Fujio reply to his WeChat with his own eyes. At this moment, there was a faint cold light in his eyes. Get out of the way, let him come over. What? Coco was so shocked that he bit off the rabbit's ear. The bodyguards looked at each other and froze in place. Even Chen Xiaodong's eyes widened in disbelief. He actually let the young master pass. The surrounding students covered their mouths in disbelief. Fujio raised her hand and patted their shoulders. I told you that your CEO was waiting for me. Why don't you believe me? The bodyguards immediately turned around. They wanted to prove it to their boss. They didn't believe it was true. Let him come here. Qin Emo repeated his words in an indifferent tone. Coco turned around in surprise. Captain, don't be like this. Even if that person hugged you before, you can't just beat him up because you want to, especially in public. Chapter 40. Qin Emo frowned as he watched Fujio's face, which looked like it had been kissed by God, get closer and closer to him. She smelled so good, with the smell of candy. The young man's light pink lips, which were perfect for kissing, were right in front of him with a teasing smile. In the face of such seduction, only Qin Emo could remain noble. His eyes curved into a smile, and his eyes were full of warning. Don't get so close to me when you talk. Get in. Fujio was a little surprised, thinking that he would blush or something. So boring. Almighty Qin was indeed not easy to deal with, but it was only interesting when there was a challenge. She would try breathing into his ear next time. Let's see if he would always be so indifferent. Fujio found something interesting to do. Coco and Fatty, on the other hand, widened their eyes as they listened. What did they just hear? Captain actually said to let this gay get in the car. Fujio knew what these two were thinking. As soon as she sat down, she curled up the corner of her mouth. Hello, let me reintroduce myself. I am Spade Z Fujio. It would have been better if she hadn't said that. As soon as she said that, Fatty almost skidded on the steering wheel. Spade Z. Not only him, but even Coco's face also cracked in an instant. No wonder Captain paused for a second. Who would have thought that a gay nouveau riche would be that cool spadesy? The setting shouldn't be like this. One had to know that among the students interviewed, the first person they eliminated was this gay. Was this a joke? Or was he still dreaming? Or was this gay pretending to be him? No, he couldn't be pretending, because he saw Captain talking to this guy on WeChat. But this was too unreal. I imagined Spadesy to be a burly man, Coco said listlessly. Fujio raised her eyebrows and smiled wickedly. I'm really sorry that I didn't grow up to be what you imagined, so I can't overpower you. Coco. Captain. Now I believe that this guy is Spadesy. Coco clenched his fists. Can I beat him up? Spadesy was asking for a beating the moment he opened his mouth. This was definitely Spadesy's style. He recalled the first time he saw this guy in the game. He was so cocky that he didn't even add him as a friend. Other than the captain, no one else had his contact information. Fujio smiled. You want to fight? Sure, but I'm afraid you'll cry after the fight. Coco's face turned red from being teased, but he couldn't argue with Fujio. He could only look at Chin Mo and blurt out, Captain, you were the one who recruited him. You should control him. Fujio was stunned by his words. Why did she let Almighty Chin control her? Are they close? They had only seen each other a few times. Didn't they just exchange WeChat messages? But Chin Mo turned to look at her without warning. That well-ironed suit and noble side profile were very much in line with his identity as a CEO. He indeed had the disposition to manage people. Then he put down the esports magazine in his hand and said to himself in a calm tone, Don't bully children. Hearing that his captain was standing up for him, Coco immediately raised his chin like a cat. But on second thought, wait a minute. Children. The corner of Coco's mouth twitched, and he felt wronged. Captain, are you really helping me? Aren't you bullying me with Spadesy? This is only your first gay meetup, and you're already so biased. Fortunately, Spadesy wasn't a girl. Chapter 41. Fujio thought Chin Mo was right, and was about to praise him. But before she could speak, Almighty Chin spoke again, slowly bringing up the dark history she didn't want to face the most. Also, I don't like men, especially not being kept by men. Fujio. Such a sharp-tongued man was not worthy of praise at all. Coco laughed this time and felt curious. He asked Fujio with the rabbit in his arms, How did you become Spadesy? When our captain added you, you were dismissive. Don't you like our captain the most? Hearing that, Fujio let out a long sigh. People are always young and frivolous. Are you saying that you don't like President Chin anymore? Fatty turned around. Chin Mo's fingers froze. Coco's eyes turned cold as he looked at his captain. He pulled Fatty back. What the hell are you talking about? Chin Mo saw that the car was quiet, and he glanced at Fujio indifferently. His deep voice carried an irresistible coldness. Drive. Yes. Fatty didn't dare to say anything else. He quickly sat up straight, stepped on the accelerator, and drove to the main road on the left. The students outside the Hummer were all dumbfounded, especially Chen Xiaodong, whose face was filled with astonishment. When did their young master and young Master Chin become so close? Young Master Chin didn't beat him up, and even took him away? Was he going to bring him home to teach him a lesson? This was not impossible. Chen Xiaodong shuddered at the thought of that scene. What to do? Should he inform Madam? No, he should call the young master first, and ask him what was going on. Fujio's phone rang as soon as the Hummer made a turn. She picked it up casually, as if she didn't care who was sitting next to her. Hey. Young master, it's me. Chen Xiaodong hurriedly said. Where is young Master Chin taking you? Is there any danger? Fujio listened to the conversation and raised her eyebrows. She looked sideways and asked the man next to her. Where are we going? I'll take you to dinner. Chin Mo closed the magazine, his voice still calm. Don't people in the game have a meal when they first meet? That's right. But I really didn't expect you to be like this. To be honest, after Almighty Chin heard that she wanted to meet him yesterday, did he look up a lot of procedures? Fujio paused and said to the phone, He's taking me to dinner. What do you want to eat? When Chen Xiaodong heard the answer, he became even more anxious. Do you want to eat dumplings? Chop you up and make you into dumplings? Young master, don't be afraid. I'll go and save you now. Fujio. No, I didn't sleep with him. Why would he kill me? Don't think about these useless things all day. Fujio corrected him lazily. She didn't care at all. We're just having a friendly meal together. Chen Xiaodong glared. Young master. You still haven't given up on sleeping with young Master Qin? If he finds out, he'll kill you. His voice was slightly loud. Especially in a fully enclosed car. The sound was amplified several times. The fatty sitting in front obviously heard it. His hand slipped, and he almost hit the car on the left. Coco didn't move, and just stood there with Fatty. He wanted to turn around but didn't dare. Chapter 42. The air around the Hummer froze, not moving at all. Fujio could clearly feel the changes around her, especially the cold aura coming from her left side. He already knows. Fujio said helplessly and hung up. She looked at Chinemo evilly. Would you believe me if I said it was a misunderstanding? Chinemo looked at her, his gaze cold. What do you think? This is really a misunderstanding. In order to be more convincing, Fujio emphasized the last sentence. You are so hard to sleep. Chinemo laughed. His thin lips were cold, and he ground his teeth hard. I'm sorry, it's so hard to push me down. Should I lie flat and let you do whatever you want? If you want, that's fine too. Fujio's tone indicated that she was really considering it. As soon as he finished speaking, Fatty's feet twitched, and his speed increased by several notches. Coco was trying to shrink into nothing. Chinemo suddenly reached out his hand and pinched the face that made his teeth itch with hatred. He said in a deep voice, Fujio. Fujio raised her eyebrows, raised her head, and looked at him in confusion. Her eyes were as beautiful as his cat's. It was mainly the fluffy silver-gray hair that gave Chinemo an illusion. If you still want to eat, then talk less. Chinemo let go of his face. His fingertips could still feel the smooth touch. His eyes couldn't help but look out of the window. There wasn't any warmth in his voice. Chinemo told himself that since he was Spade Z, he wouldn't throw this kid out of the car window, who liked to generate electricity randomly. The place they ate at was a star-rated hotel, the most expensive place in Rivertown. The lights were dazzling, and the decorations were luxurious. Hundreds of goblets of red wine hung from the ceiling. Even the waiter was dressed in a white shirt and black pants. He was very well-mannered. Seeing Chinmo's car drive in, someone immediately went up to welcome him. However, that person was not a waiter, but the hotel lobby manager. President Chin, I've cleaned up the greenhouse on the top floor. Today's Australian lobsters are all fresh, and there's also Arctic shellfish. When Chinemo heard the manager's words, he nodded and said, Tell him what he wants to eat. The lobby manager paused and looked at Fujio hesitantly. It would have been fine if he hadn't seen it, but the moment he did, his heart nearly jumped out of his chest. Wasn't this the prodigal son of the Fu family? Every time he came to their hotel, he would always order a lot of things to show off his wealth, and ask them to open a bottle of wine. In fact, he didn't even have that much money in his pocket. He was simply a nouveau riche that no one liked. Why was the CEO with him? He even wanted him to ask for the other party's opinion before ordering? Fujio knew what the manager was thinking just by looking at his face. After all, she was no stranger to this place. In the past, she often came here to eat. Presumably, the lobby manager also had a deep impression of her, and because of that pair of siblings, she became a refused customer. Lobster then. Fujio curled her lips into a smile, and her eyes emitted a faint light. Sure enough, he still liked expensive things. The lobby manager silently noted it down. Chinemo, who was walking in front, tilted his head over, his voice faint. Do you like lobsters? Fujio nodded with the lollipop in her mouth. She didn't deny it. Chinemo nodded and said to the people behind him, Order 10 and give them all to him. Chapter 43. Yes. The manager found it very difficult to say this. Although he was surprised, he was good at reading people's expressions. When he raised his head again, his face was full of smiles. Young Master Fu, what else would you like to eat? I'll ask them to serve it to you. Young Master Fu? Fujio paused and paused. I don't like the title of Young Master Fu. It's easy to be mistaken. The other Young Master Fu comes here often, doesn't he? The manager actually wanted to say that he couldn't be mistaken. That person was obviously very elegant, and was also an excellent student. Anyone could tell that. But the CEO was here, so he couldn't say anything. He could only say hesitantly, then. Call me Lord Jio from now on. Fujio pulled out her lollipop with a skateboard under her arm and smiled domineeringly. The manager's smile froze. What? Fujio raised her eyebrows. Managerly, you don't want to? The manager glanced at his CEO's face. Chinmo's eyes turned cold. Fujio. Fujio looked up and blinked her left eye at Almighty Chin, who was very close to her. She looked very innocent, but she couldn't hide her hostility. Don't be too arrogant. Chinmo turned sideways and pressed her head with one hand. He lowered his voice, and his irresistible breath landed on Fujio's left ear. He said in a magnetic and domineering voice, "This is my territory." Fujio's heart sank. That's right. The manager raised his head and was about to snort. But his CEO turned his gaze over again, and his eyes were cold. Managerly, you can call him whatever he wants you to call him. Don't make me teach you how to treat customers. This was completely different from what he expected. Shouldn't the CEO just tell that nouveau riche to get lost? Why was he supporting him? The manager froze again. Then. Chinmo lifted his eyelids, put his left hand into his pocket, and said arrogantly, "Call for someone." The manager trembled and immediately lowered his head. Lord Jio, go and serve the lobster. Fujio nodded at him. The manager cursed in his heart. A dog relying on its master's power. Fujio looked at his unwilling back, and the corner of her mouth curled up coldly. This time, Chinmo lost his patience and pulled her over. According to Almighty Chin's style, he never liked physical contact with people. So he was tugging at Fujio's school uniform. Just like that, Almighty Chin dragged Fujio to the top floor like a cart. Both Coco and Fatty felt that Spade Z was able to survive until now because of his gaming skills. Otherwise, the CEO wouldn't have dragged him to the top floor, but directly thrown him out of the hotel. But even so, the CEO was very tolerant of this kid. She even touched his head just now. This was something that had never happened before. Fujio didn't mind being dragged around by Almighty Chin. She had a great time today anyway. However, I can't finish so many lobsters. Fujio looked at the table full of Australian lobsters and felt a little melancholy. Chinmo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his expression indifferent. If you can't finish it, bring it back. You can take it away. She didn't expect Almighty Chin to be so considerate. Fujio just erased the image of an inhuman tyrant from her mind. Then she heard Chinmo say, "Go catch 2 live ones for young Master Jio. Let him finish all of them." Fujio. Chapter 44. No one dared to disobey Chinmo's words. Not just in the hotel owned by the Chin Group, but in the entire Jiang City. Whatever he said, there would be people who would do it immediately. Soon, the waiter brought in 2 lobsters in bamboo cages. Each lobster was huge, and the pincers were still moving. Fujio watched from the side, and she suddenly felt that the rest of the lobsters were even harder to swallow. This man was doing this on purpose. Couldn't they have a happy game meetup? CEO Chin. The waiter raised the bamboo cages respectfully, so that their CEO could see the quality of the lobsters better. Chinmo still had a cigarette between his slender fingers, and he glanced over there indifferently. Give it to your Lord Jio. Your Lord Jio. Fujio held a big pincer in her mouth and took a big bite. Chinmo looked at the young man's slightly depressed face. Under the shocked gazes of others, he reached out his hand and touched that fluffy head. With a faint smile, there was a deep sense of oppression. Eat slowly. If it's not enough, you can ask for more. Hearing that, Fujio wiped the corner of her mouth decisively and smiled wickedly. I want to go pee first. Chinmo took his hand back. His eyes were deep and beautiful. He looked at Fujio for a few seconds before curling up his thin lips. We won't touch the lobsters so you can keep them. Go. He didn't even give her a chance to pee? Fujiu narrowed her eyes. This man was really vengeful. But it was okay. She was eating his money anyway. She didn't know how to cook lobsters, but she could eat them. When she had an empty stomach, she could fight again. Fujiu loosened her fingers handsomely, stood up, and walked out of the greenhouse on the top floor lazily. But she didn't know what Coco and Fatty's expressions were like behind her. The second time. Today was the second time that their CEO touched this guy's head. The two turned their heads at the same time, looking like they wanted to say something but didn't. Of course, Chinemo knew that they were looking at him. He reached out and flicked the cigarette butt, saying one word lightly. Captain, why are you so nice to this Spadesy? You didn't even treat me and Fatty this well. Coco finally said everything he wanted to say today. Chinemo took the wet towel from the waiter and wiped his hands. You can eat if you want. Just watch the 2 live ones and start from 10. Coco paused, because he thought about the scene carefully. And when he looked back, he realized that it was really scary. It seemed that the captain's gentle concern wasn't a good thing after all. But it was still a little strange. Captain had never touched anyone's head before. Not to mention touching her head. Even that kind of smile just now was rare. Just as Coco was racking his brains, Fatty saw his CEO stand up for some reason. He hurriedly swallowed the beef in his mouth and asked, CEO Chin, where are you going? You guys continue eating. I'm going to take a look at that guy who's trying to escape. Chinemo casually turned his side profile. His black hair fell down, revealing only a pair of bottomless eyes, which were as bright as an eagle in the sky. When he said this, his eyes were as cold as crushed ice. It was fine that he escaped once, but how could he let him escape again in front of him? The hotel's bathroom was built at the corner of every floor. It was made of high-quality incense, and the exterior decoration was basically the same as the hotel's, very luxurious. But Chapter 45. If she went to the women's restroom, she would be treated as a hooligan. If she went to the men's restroom wasn't sealed. Unless she squatted, Fujio tucked her bangs behind her head and furrowed her pretty eyebrows. I've decided. I'll go to whichever restroom is empty. To make herself look less wretched, Fujio put a smile on her face and put one hand in her pocket. She stood at the door handsomely. A girl just came out of the restroom. She looked up and saw a handsome young man. She blushed immediately. This guy. How could he be so handsome? But it was strange. Why was he standing here? The girl looked at Fujio in confusion. Fujio curled up her lips and pointed at the sink naturally. The faucet seems to be broken. I can't get any water out. Let me see. The girl lowered her head shyly. What should I do? I'm being hit on by this handsome young man. Should she act more reserved or more bold? The girl suppressed her excitement and reached out her hand. She said in a small voice, It's not broken. Everything here is sensitive. You can put your hand in, and the water will come out. Oh, I see. Fujio looked like she suddenly realized something. She turned her face to the side and smiled at the girl. Thank you. No, you're welcome. His skin was even better up close, and his eyelashes were unbelievably long. How could there be such a good-looking person? The girl felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. She was about to ask for his WeChat number. Suddenly, a fair and slender hand reached out and placed itself between the two of them, grabbing onto the back of the pretty boy's collar. The girl was stunned. What was going on? Fujio was stunned as well. She looked up subconsciously at the person who grabbed her. It was a figure standing with his back to the light. It was Chinemo. He was wearing a black suit jacket, and his shirt collar was half unbuttoned. That extremely handsome, mixed-race face exuded a noble and extraordinary aura. He was reserved and low-key, but there was a hint of danger in him. Now he was grabbing her with one hand, and his other hand was casually in his pocket. He was staring at her with deep eyes. Fujio smiled calmly. Almighty Chin, what a coincidence. You're here to use the restroom too? Could it be that they're here to watch you flirt with girls? Chinemo asked slowly. He had heard a few words just now and his lips turned cold. The faucet is broken? I can't believe you came up with such a lame pickup line excuse. This brat was simply exuding electricity all the time. Going to the toilet was the same. Did he like to tease people that much? It can't be helped. There's only a water tap here. Fujio wasn't embarrassed at all. She looked at the girl who was shocked by the scene and blinked her left eye. Her peach blossom eyes were very beautiful. The girl covered her mouth and looked at the two of them excitedly. Almighty, almighty Chin. Fujio tapped her thin lips with her fingertip and made an evil sound. Almighty Chin, so she's your fan. This time, before Fujio could finish, Chin-mo grabbed the back of his collar with force and dragged him into the men's washroom with an indifferent expression like he was carrying a kitten. Chapter 46. In the men's room, Chin-mo loosened his grip on her collar. What were you doing standing there like a fool? Huh? Fujio raised her eyebrows and denied it with a charming smile. When did I stand there like a fool? Wasn't I hitting on girls? Chin-mo snorted and stood to the side. He didn't wear a tie, and he even unbuttoned 2 buttons. He glanced at her and said in a low voice, "Didn't you say you were going to pee? Why don't you come over?" Go over. Fujio looked at the semi-concave urinal. How could she go over? She looked like a pretty boy, but she was still a girl. Even if she wanted to pee, she didn't need a urinal like this. Maybe it was because too much time had passed. Chin-mo also sensed something. He suddenly walked over to Fujio, lowered his head, and stared at her with sparkling eyes. His voice was very calm. I checked that gay meetups require us to drink and eat together. It seemed that Almighty Chin was seriously inviting her to pee with him. Gay meetups were really troublesome. But how could she pee? She couldn't take out that thing? Fujio tilted her head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, she looked up, pressed the man's chest, and pushed him against the wall. She raised her left hand and placed it on the pale white wall behind Chin-mo. That posture was as cool as flowing water. Then, she leaned over and breathed into Chin-mo's ear. In fact, during a gay meetup, you can even take off your partner's pants. Almighty Chin, do you want to try? Chin-mo's body stiffened at first, and when he realized what she said, his handsome face instantly turned frighteningly cold. He looked at the person in front of him and called out his name word by word. Fujio. Ha! Fujio was still smiling, and her right hand was about to help him unbutton his pants. Don't be shy, we're all men, so we have to go through this process. If we don't compare the size of that thing, how will we know who's better, right? Chin-mo couldn't take it anymore. He reached out and grabbed the wrist that made him clench his teeth. He pursed his lips tightly, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Do you want to die? No, I'm just expressing my friendliness. Almighty Chin treated me to so many lobsters, so of course I have to return the favor. We're all brothers, so don't be so formal. Fujio was still blinking. She leaned over and got closer to him. That beautiful silhouette became clearer and clearer. Her skin was so fair and tender that even the fine hair could be seen. Her body temperature was so close that it was killing her. Chin-mo looked at him viciously. He couldn't suppress the urge to strangle him. Swoosh! With a backhand, she pinned him to the wall and said in an extremely cold voice, "If you touch me again, I'll tear off your claws." Fujio didn't mind being pressed down by him. She turned around and smiled brightly at him. Almighty Chin is so pure. Don't tell me you're still a virgin. That lazy look and silver hair really did look like his cat. They both didn't know what was good for them. Chin-mo took a deep breath, reached out his hand, and pinched the young man's chin. Every word he said was vicious. Be good. Don't force me to kill you. Do you understand? Fujio coaxed in a low voice. Don't be angry. We're good friends. Chin-mo sneered, pushed him away, and fixed his messy collar. Don't use your flirting tone to flirt with me. Pee yourself and get back here. Chapter 47. Coco and Fatty, who were sitting in the top floor greenhouse, didn't know what happened in the washroom. The two of them were still eating, and as they ate, they felt that CEO Chin had been in the washroom for too long. Fatty frowned and asked, Did something happen? Coco didn't care at all. What could happen? That guy only thinks about sleeping with Captain all day. Ko. Fatty put down the knife and fork in his hand and pursed his lips forcefully behind him. The sensitive Coco immediately sensed the unusual coldness behind him. He raised his voice and changed his words quickly. He doesn't think that he can sleep with Captain whenever he wants. Our Captain likes girls, unlike him who's gay. Phew, luckily he didn't say the last sentence. If he continues like this, I'm worried that Captain will be turned gay by him. It was really thrilling, really thrilling. Coco reached out his hand and wiped his sweat. Chinmo's expression didn't warm up after he changed his words. On the contrary, the atmosphere in the private room seemed to freeze after he came in. It was unbelievably cold. Coco felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar. That coldness that made people shiver from the bottom of their hearts was indeed coming from CEO Chin. He turned his head and gave Fatty a look. Why did Captain's eyes become like this after one trip to the washroom? I feel like he wants to kill someone. Fatty shook his head. How would I know? Shut up. Be careful that CEO Chin has his eyes on you. Just as the two of them instinctively shrunk back, they heard their CEO's sinister and black-bellied voice ring out above their heads again. Give him 10 more lobsters, bigger ones. Not to mention Fatty and Coco. Even the waiter standing next to them had a more look on his face. But they had to do whatever CEO Chin said, even though this whole thing was very strange, and not like CEO Chin's usual style. After all, it was quite uncomfortable to eat all those lobsters in one's stomach. After the waiter left, Fatty thought for a while and said, CEO Chin, do you really think that Fujio is Spadesy? Why do I feel like he's a bit weird? He's bent. That's how the bent world is. After Coco spoke up for Fujio, he added, but he seems to be completely different from the prodigal son of the Fu family that I remember. Wasn't he quite an introvert in the past? Fatty was a shut-in and didn't know. Coco counted on his fingers. Infatuated, flaunting his wealth, no taste, just a typical nouveau riche. But he hasn't harmed anyone. It's just that attitude that makes people dislike him. Plus, he was gay, so he was ostracized. But he's also gay now. And he wants to sleep. When Fatty said the word sleep, he suddenly paused. Chinemo played with the silver lighter between his fingers, raising his eyebrows with a cold smile. What else does he want to sleep? Why aren't you continuing? Sleep, sleep, sleep. Fatty really couldn't find an excuse. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Sleep with me, okay? You? Chinemo turned the plane, and his fingers paused. Then his voice became even colder, like an unsheathed ice, full of lethality. He can't sleep. His looks aren't up to par. Chapter 48. In order to save Fatty, Coco asked, Captain, should we try that Fujio? There's no need to try. Chinemo tilted his head and said lightly, without any emotion in his voice. It's him. There was no other person who had this trait that made him want to strangle him to death, just by looking at him. Fatty frowned. I really don't understand why Spadesy suddenly asked to meet him. Could it be that he was playing games to get closer to the CEO? Is that why he wants to meet him? After he finished speaking, Fatty deliberately looked at his CEO. Fortunately, his CEO was rational and didn't seem to reject his idea. However, Coco seemed to have thought of something and suddenly sat up straight. No, it's not to get closer to the captain. If it was such a simple reason, he wouldn't have rejected the captain when he added him. Isn't our team recruiting new people recently? Many companies want to send people to the corporation, but there seems to be a problem with Madame Fu's side. All the players have been poached, and now she can't even submit the most basic list. If this continues, her company will definitely go bankrupt. You're saying that Spadesy wants to meet the CEO because of this? Fatty said and glanced at Chinemo again. But this time, he didn't know if it was his illusion, but the CEO's lighter in his hand actually paused for a moment. However, Chinemo didn't say anything. He lifted his jade-like fingers and took the wine glass from the table. He swirled it back and forth twice. His deep eyes were a little cold, so the reason he wanted to see him was because of this. After Fujio finished filling the tub, she found that there were 10 more crayfish in front of her seat. In fact, the table they were eating at wasn't small. It was the kind of luxurious presidential table that could seat 12 people. Now the entire table was filled with crayfish. Almighty Chin, and the other's food only took up a little bit of space. Was he trying to make her die from overeating? Fujio looked up at Chin Mo, feeling very melancholy. Why didn't the strategy guide teach the Almighty that he should be reserved and tolerant when meeting a game friend for the first time? Even if you're rich, you shouldn't waste it like this. This isn't a crayfish that costs 10 renminbi. This is an Australian crayfish. When the man saw the silver-haired young man grumble gloomily, as if he was complaining about something, he chuckled softly. Then he took out a cigarette and bit it between his thin lips. He tilted his head and lit it. Then he raised his chin. It's all yours. Eat it. Okay. Fujio also smiled. It was a little evil. So what if he ate? He wasn't the one paying anyway. However, why did Almighty Chin look even colder than before? She didn't really take off his pants, so he didn't have to sneer at her, right? Could it be that something had happened while she was gone? Fujio pondered for a while, but couldn't figure out anything. She ate a lot of lobsters and was very full, but she was still satisfied. As long as she could meet him once, she wouldn't have to disguise herself when she participated in the competition. She wouldn't have to worry about Chin Mo checking on her at all times. To be honest, this was the first time she had encountered such a difficult opponent. He even deduced that she liked to eat lollipops. If he continued to investigate, who knew what he might find out? Right now, she couldn't afford to be investigated by Chin Mo. Chapter 49. After eating the last pincer, Fujio felt it was time to leave. She was about to say goodbye to Almighty Chin. Thank you for the lobster, see you next time. But she heard Chin Mo ask with a faint smile. Done eating? Yeah, I'm done. Fujio nodded. She was in a good mood. Not bad, Almighty Chin had learned how to make small talk with people. It turned out that the gay meetup strategy was useful. Chin Mo chuckled. A cold glint flashed across his eyes when he saw how lazy he was. He lifted his finger. The waiter immediately handed over the menu with both hands. Chin Mo glanced at the waiter. Go get the bill. The waiter was confused. Didn't the CEO need to pay for meals? Coco and Fatty didn't understand what was going on either. But they heard their CEO say calmly, Give it to your Lord Gio. He's treating us today. Coco, Fatty, Fujio, even the waiter. Fujio's reaction was the most direct. Her eyes, which were about to flirt with Chin Mo, twitched. When did this meal become her treat? And wasn't this hotel owned by Chin? Almighty, I remember this is your family's business. Are you sure you want me to treat you? Where's your demeanor? Fujio raised her eyebrows. Coco and Fatty were a little embarrassed by their conversation. After all, their CEO had never asked anyone to treat them, not to mention at his own hotel. The waiters standing at the side also looked at each other and didn't move forward. Chin Mo looked at Fujio's beautiful peach blossom eyes and said faintly, I only treat people like this when I'm close to them. Fujio. This man was doing it on purpose. He was using her words to shut her up. She had only breathed into his ear. How could he treat her like this? She only had 5,000 yuan on her, and it was earned from playing games. At most she could pay for 5 lobsters. How did the gay meetup course teach people? Almighty Chin, if you keep being so vengeful, you won't be able to get a girlfriend, let alone a good friend. What? You don't want to treat me? Chin Mo raised the teacup in his hand. He didn't drink it. Through the mist his eyes shone. Didn't you say we have a good relationship? Fuji leaned back and said straightforwardly. It's not that I don't want to, but I don't have the money. You don't have money? Coco's tone was a little high, as if he didn't believe it at all. How is that possible? Fujio laughed. Why not? Someone thought I was embarrassing, and was afraid of offending young Master Chin. So he removed my name from the Fu family. You should know about this. Coco did know about it. After all, his family had some business dealings with the Fu family. This matter caused quite a stir. His dad also said that no matter how bad Fujio was, his old man shouldn't have treated the one he was raising outside as his own. He even cut off Fujio and his mother's financial support. That third was even worse. He took the opportunity to poach people. He was basically forcing He Honghua to her death. For a moment, Coco didn't know what to say. He turned his head and looked at his CEO. But before Qin Emo could speak, Chapter 50. In an instant, the temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. The waiters stood on the side, their fingers frozen, and their eyes were filled with unspeakable shock. Someone actually dared to make such a gesture in front of their CEO. And what did he say? Using his body. It couldn't be what they thought it was. But looking at that young Master Fu's posture, it was indeed the CEO. It was hard for them not to think in that direction, especially when his pale lips seemed to be only a centimeter away from their CEO's ear. If he got any closer, he would probably kiss him? The CEO's aura was obviously much colder, but that young master didn't seem to notice it. The mole under his eye shone with a bewitching luster. What? You don't like me using my body? Then let me kiss you. Fujio said happily, and it seemed like she was about to take action. Qin Mo's eyes suddenly turned cold. He reached out one hand and grabbed his wrist tightly, pressing Fujio down on the table. That look in his eyes showed that he really wanted to strangle Fujio. Then, he forcefully pulled out Fujio's wallet from her school uniform pocket and threw it into the waiter's hands. His voice was as cold as a cold pond in the snow. Swipe all the cards for him. Yes. At this moment, no waiters dared to disobey Qin Mo's orders. Everyone could see that their CEO's cold and indifferent image was about to be blown away by this person's teasing. Fujio still wanted to keep some of her assets, so she tried to negotiate with Qin Mo. Can you leave me 1,000 for my living expenses? Qin Mo didn't listen to Fujio at all. He pressed him down with that posture and looked down at him. Qin Mo had to restrain himself from breaking this guy's wrist. Who knew that this guy would learn to be obedient? He maintained that posture and looked at him with a smile. His warm breath seemed to fall on the back of his hand. He couldn't tell why. Qin Mo felt that Fujio was like his cat. Even her hair was soft, and it scratched his palm again and again. People who didn't know better would think that the young man was acting coquettishly. But in fact, this guy was just pretending. Even if they were to play games together in the future, he would change this guy's bad habit of flirting. Where did he learn to flirt with anyone he saw? Qin Mo narrowed his eyes slightly. He put out the cigarette in the ashtray with one hand and pinned Fujio down with the other. He was still wearing a suit jacket, and a lock of black hair fell down with his movements. He looked very masculine, not only in his posture, but also in his fierce eyes. Qin Mo's current state was enough to make one's legs go weak. No wonder his fans called him Almighty Qin. Too handsome. So cool. Unfortunately, Fujio wasn't in the mood to appreciate the Almighty's beauty. After all, her card was about to be used up. And this was simply bad news for a hacker who had just saved some money for her computer. President Qin. The waiter walked over with sweat on his forehead and raised the card with both hands. A total of 26,580 yuan has been spent. Lord Zhou's card only has 5,000 yuan, which has been used up. Qin Mo nodded faintly. Fujio thought that this was the end of it. After all, the money in her card was gone. What else could she do? Chapter 51. Tab. People who came here to eat never tabulated. Especially people of their age and circle. They loved to compare who was more generous. Tabulating when they went out to eat. How shabby was that? Coco lowered his head and bit his finger. The CEO's plan was too evil. He was obviously trying to help Fujio become famous in the circle. In the future, no matter where Fujio went, this matter would be brought up. Fujio didn't care about her reputation, but she cared about money. Almighty Qin, didn't the guide tell you that your friend doesn't have any money? Shouldn't you make up for the difference? Qin Mo glanced at him faintly. That's the normal process of a gay meetup. Obviously, that doesn't suit you. In order to prevent you from having the ridiculous idea of paying with your body, it's better for you to hand over the money. Fujio. This lobster meal was really a loss. In order to avoid further losses, Fujio, who originally didn't want to bring the 2 live lobsters home, decided to carry them back, even if she had to carry them. This was her treat, and she still owed him 30,000 yuan. But spending money to avoid disaster. And after this meal, she wouldn't have to worry about being investigated again. Do you want to go back yourself? Or do you want me to give you a ride? Qin Emo glanced at the lobsters in the young man's arms, and he seemed to think that the young man looked like his cat that had just been drenched in the rain. Qin Emo knew that the young man only looked pitiful, but his claws were still hard. But he still asked in a low voice. After all, the Qin family's etiquette and upbringing were there. Qin Emo also thought of another point. If this guy asked for anything in the car, as long as it wasn't too much, he would agree. After all, a big part of the reason why he met Spade Z this time was to ask him to join his team. Fujio didn't stand on ceremony. She flipped her silver hair and curled up the corner of her mouth. You give me a ride? I don't even have enough money to take a taxi. This place is a bit far from my house, and it's not practical to skateboard back. Okay. Qin Emo reached out and opened the car door. His expression was very calm, and he still looked cold and noble. At this time, the atmosphere of a normal gay meetup began. Fatty and Coco always thought that it wasn't a gay meetup. It was simply a knife and sword fight. Fatty was still driving. There was music in the car. Fujio sat on the left side of Qin Emo. There was some distance between them, but they didn't talk much. Coco wasn't used to this, and he couldn't help but ask, Fujio, what about your mom's company? Is it really going to close down? Why did it close down? Fujio retracted her gaze from the night outside the window. Her eyes were deep. Coco licked his lips. I heard that most of the contestants in your mom's company have been poached away, and now they can't form a team. If you don't make adjustments, you'll be disqualified. Once the investors pull out, your mom's company won't be able to hold on. There is indeed such a thing. Fujio smiled, and a bone-chilling coldness appeared in her eyes. Who did you hear this from? That 3 outside? Or that illegitimate child of the Fu family? No matter who you heard it from, my mother's company will not collapse. Even if it collapses, it should be someone else. Coco didn't expect that the person who had been so unrestrained in the hotel just a moment ago would be filled with such a strong sense of oppression. Chapter 52. Qin Emo also looked over at Fujio. That pair of deep eyes made it impossible to see through his emotions. President Qin, we've arrived at the Fu mansion. Fatty stopped the car. Qin Emo glanced at Fujio again. Fujio was still holding 2 live lobsters in her arms. She raised her head and smiled at him. Then I'm leaving. Thank you, Almighty Qin, for sending me back. See you in the game later? The two of them were sitting together. As long as Qin Emo tilted his head, he could see that innocent face. He could even see the fine hairs on his cheeks. Seeing him like this, Qin Emo didn't care so much about his bad mood. That's all? You're not going to say anything else? Anything else? Drive slowly. Send me a WeChat message when you get home. I'll call you for a dungeon raid. Fujio leaned forward and brushed the black hair in front of Almighty Qin's forehead with her fingers. If the Almighty is willing to fight in person, they will definitely offer a higher price. Originally, Qin Emo wanted to say, if you're here because of your family's company, I can help you solve it. But he didn't expect that this guy would only be quiet for a minute before he started to court death here again. Qin Emo took a deep breath, narrowing his eyes. His chest rose and fell, and his voice was low. The words seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Scram! Angry again? Fujio glared at him, and then burst into laughter. She raised her hands and rubbed Qin Mo's hair. Almighty, don't be so cool all the time. Be more amiable. After all, this is the first time we've met. Don't leave on bad terms. Yeah, you look better this way. Coco and Fatty sat in front of the car, not daring to look back. What was that brat doing? Rub the CEO captain's head. Have you ever heard of plucking feathers from a tiger's head? This was the same logic. The CEO probably wanted to tear him into pieces this time. Qin Emo had never been rubbed on the head before. His fingers loosened and tightened again. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He pushed open the car door and threw the smiling young man out. Drive. Two very cold words, without a trace of warmth. Fatty's body trembled. Without saying a word, he immediately stepped on the accelerator. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, his CEO wouldn't be able to control himself and fight with Spadesy. Fujio, on the other hand, was very happy. She curled her thin lips and waved at the rearview mirror with a bright smile. Almighty Chin, who was dazzled by such a smile, snorted coldly and turned his head away. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Avoid her? But she still had ways to harass him. He lowered his head and sent a WeChat message over. Guru, remember to log on when you get home. Let old driver carry you through the dungeon. Chinemo held his chin and swiped open the message. He snorted coldly. Do I need you to carry me to clear the dungeon? Then you take me. It's all the same. After Fujio finished playing, she added a smiley face. It's more fun to play games with friends. This time, Chinemo didn't reject her. He replied indifferently, got it. Was that a yes? Fujio raised her eyebrows. It seemed like the Almighty wasn't completely inhumane. If Almighty Chin really wanted to clear a dungeon with her, in that case the price of the order would go up. Group photos and the like were also included in the list. It wasn't easy to get the Almighty to help clear a dungeon. She wouldn't accept any normal price. She had to change it to VIP treatment. Not bad, not bad. There were benefits to having a gay meetup. Chapter 53. Thinking of this, Fujio's gloominess was swept away. And even the lobster in her arms didn't look so disgusting anymore. How much money the Almighty had cheated her today, she would earn it back from him. 2 words, fairness. At this moment, Chinmo's deep eyes were still looking at the few WeChat messages on his phone. His expression was complicated and hard to understand. He thought the young man would talk about something, but the young man didn't mention a word. Coco looked back at him and said hesitantly, it seems like Fujio didn't come to find Captain because of his family. But it's hard to accept that he changed so much all of a sudden. Was he acting in order to get close to Captain in the past? Maybe he knew that Captain liked well-behaved girls before. And now that he doesn't need to act anymore, he released himself? Chinemo glanced at the blinking WeChat profile picture again, and his expression was indifferent. Acting? Is this something a stupid person like him can come up with? Hearing that, Coco's mouth twitched. Captain, although Fujio wasn't that smart before, he was very smart now. Maybe he was really acting. But if he was acting, there was no need to tell them that he was Spadesy. Thinking about it this way, he felt that he overestimated Spadesy's ability to read people's expressions. If he really knew how to act, Fujio wouldn't have flirted with the CEO so much that he wanted to kill him. Then why did he change so much? Was it because his family had changed? Coco was very confused. As long as he keeps acting like this, we don't need to care about him. Chinemo tilted his head and closed his eyes, as if he was taking a nap. His black hair was messy because he had just been rubbed, but he still felt that there was something on his head, so he uncomfortably rubbed it with his fingers. Coco and Fatty froze when they heard that. Keep acting like this. What kind of flirting with the CEO? Coco lowered his head and bit the rabbit's ear. Captain was really indulging that Spadesy. At night, Chen Xiaodong was still standing at the door, looking around on his tiptoes. He was very anxious, but young master didn't reply to his messages. He only said, he already knows now. Then he hung up. Chen Xiaodong's heart skipped a beat. He already knows now. What did that mean? Did it mean that young master already knew that young master wanted to sleep with him? Wouldn't the young master never be able to return? Chen Xiaodong's eyes widened as he stood up. No, he had to think of something. How about breaking into the military compound? The Qin family seemed to be in there. Just as Chen Xiaodong was hopping with worry, Fujio patted him on the shoulder from behind. What are you doing standing here in the middle of the night? Young master. Chen Xiaodong's eyes lit up. Young master who came back alive. Young master, have you been beaten up somewhere? Don't worry, just tell me, I'll go get the medicine for you. Fujio listened to his explanation and rubbed her temples. Why do you always want me to get beaten up? Look carefully. I don't have any injuries on my body. Only then did Chen Xiaodong notice that there was indeed nothing wrong with his young master. Instead, that handsome face was tinged with a layer of red, as if he had eaten to his heart's content. He was even holding 2 live Australian lobsters in his arms. Chapter 54. Jiang City wasn't near the sea, so a pair of Australian lobsters like this would be worth a lot of money even if they were dead, let alone alive. Didn't young master run out of money recently? How did he get these things? Almighty Qin gave them to me. After Fujiu said that, she threw the lobster into his arms. Find a bucket and let Aunt Lin keep it. Cook it when my mom comes back. Qin. Young master Qin gave him lobsters? Chen Xiaodong's eyes widened, and he suddenly felt that the thing in his hands was as heavy as gold. Was the relationship between young master and young master Qin good enough for young master Qin to give him a gift? This was something he had never seen before in his life. One had to know that when young master first confessed to young master Qin almost asked someone to crush young master with one hand. Now he was giving young master a gift. But giving lobsters as a gift, wasn't that a little too weird? Almighty Qin's world wasn't something mortals like them could understand. Wait, young master, where are you going? Chen Xiaodong couldn't help but ask when he saw Fujiu going upstairs. Before Fujiu closed the door, she only said one thing to him. Get on the game and flirt with the Almighty. Chen Xiaodong and Aunt Lin, who had just walked out, both felt that their young master was a little obsessed recently. He actually began to fight with the computer without eating or sleeping for a man. But they knew their young master's skills better than anyone else, and he didn't even know how to operate his character in the game. Ever since Madame started her company, they knew that their young master was terrible at playing with netizens. Such a young master actually took the opportunity to hook up with Almighty Qin in the game. One had to admit that sometimes, when people got lucky, it was quite shocking. Aunt Lin didn't cook those 2 lobsters. She didn't dare to touch them when she heard that they were gifts from young master Qin. She carefully got a small wooden bucket, put some seaweed in it, and sent it upstairs for her young master to keep as a pet. When Fujiu came out of the shower, the first thing she saw were the 2 lobsters baring their fangs at her. She casually picked one up and looked around. Then, she took a photo with her phone and sent it to Qin Mo. I'm using my new pet lobster to summon my teammate, Almighty Qin. The photo was taken with Fujiu's body turned sideways. She didn't even notice that when the photo was posted, her collarbone could be vaguely seen through her loose pajamas. Qin Mo unlocked his phone and glanced at the photo. His gaze swept over the youngster's fair and delicate collarbone. His gaze paused, and he frowned as he replied, his voice a little cold. Don't send such a photo in the future. Such a picture? What was wrong with the photo she sent? Fujiu looked at the thing in her hand. Wasn't it just a lobster? And he, Almighty Qin, personally gave it to her. Forget it. Talking was more important. Are you playing online? Fujiu sent a voice message while turning on the computer case. When Qin Mo heard it, the sound was very clear. Was this guy using such a lousy machine to play games? Wait for me at the Bridge of Helplessness. Of course, Fujiu wouldn't refuse. She quickly logged into her account and teleported her character to the side of the Bridge of Helplessness. Ding! Something seemed to have been sent over. Your friend Qin Mo has gifted you 99,999 game gold coins. Do you accept? This wasn't the end of it. Another message came over right after. Chapter 55. Your friend Qin Mo has sent you another 99,999 game coins. Do you want to accept it? 99,999 game coins? If converted into RMB, it would be 9,999 yuan. Not to mention those precious rainbow dress diamonds, which could not be bought normally. What was the Almighty doing? Even a cool person like Lord Jiu couldn't figure out what the other party was thinking. Except, Qin Mo sent a total of 6 words. Gift for the gay meetup. Fujiu. Almighty. Where on earth did you find the tutorial for the gay meetup? Why did it sound like a betrothal gift? Who would give money directly to their friends in the game? Fujio didn't know if she was lucky or unlucky to have met such a rich and black-bellied guy. After thinking about it, she still didn't accept it. But she wanted all the diamonds. She could grind them up and make weapons for the two of them. Aren't you short of money? Almighty Chin was indeed the Almighty Chin who had shaken Seijo City. Every time he spoke he was so cold and straightforward. Fujio unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. She curled up her lips and said, I am short of money, but Almighty, if you give it like this, I will think that you want to keep me. Chinmo's fingers tightened on the mouse, and he laughed very coldly. Give me back the diamonds you just accepted. That's useful. Fujio held the lollipop in her mouth, crossed her long legs and quickly replied, Almighty Chin, I'm telling you the truth because we are brothers. You can't be too stingy, especially a man. How can you take back something you've given? I just accepted a job, so let's go play the game. Be good. Chinmo's deep eyes stared at the words on the LCD screen, especially the word be good. His whole body emitted a cold and oppressive aura, which made Secretary Liang, who came to report, take a step back. What's wrong with the CEO? He suddenly felt like he was going to kill someone. Then, he saw his CEO raise his hand and fiercely type on the keyboard. Shut up, play the game. Chinmo never expected this guy to spit out any ivory when he spoke. It was all because he was Spadesy. He wouldn't kill him. Chinmo told himself that again. Fujio sent another head-scratching emoji. Diamonds can be used to make weapons. What do you want? Gradually, Chinmo got used to his way of speaking. He replied coldly, whatever. Then I'll do my own research when the time comes. With that, Fujio hooked her earphones. I'm inviting you into the team. All right. The moment he finished speaking, the scenery in the game changed. Without the soft and delicate flowing water, peach blossoms shone brightly. Instead, he arrived at an ancient tomb. There were 4 other players at the entrance of the tomb. Some of the players had approached Spadesy for business before. Knowing Spadesy's fighting ability, he was about to open the door. Spadesy said that his friend was coming to play with them. In the beginning, they felt that if there were too many people, it wouldn't be worth it to clear the ancient tomb. After all, they would have to split the loot. If someone didn't play well, they might not be able to complete the first clear. But when they saw the friends Spadesy was talking about, one by one, they all froze. Chin. Almighty Chin. How is this possible? It must be another fake version using Almighty Chin's name to swindle customers. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.